Prime Minister. Now, the Prime Minister was on Fijivillage Street Talk 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He confirmed there have been concerns raised to his office about excessive overseas travel by cabinet ministers, and he says they are being monitored, and ministers need to travel for some meetings, and they can send other people, including mission heads, or join virtually. As Minister for Finance, can you confirm the number of overseas travels or the total cost this year of overseas travel?
Well, Vijay, I concur with the Prime Minister. We have to ensure that the overseas trips that the ministers take is essential, is important, and some travel is necessary. And especially for a new government, the level of international engagement is huge. There is a heightened level of interest in invitations that ministers are getting to speak. Some meetings where, for example, IMF World Bank meetings where I go, these are meetings where we go as a country representative, where decisions are made, where we also have negotiations on certain proposals, assistance. So some travel is necessary, but the Prime Minister is right, and I concur with it, that there are some travels that could be handled by our embassies, could be handled by sending other officials. But overall, Vijay, if I can give you some figures, from January to October, we have spent $2.5 million on overseas travel, which includes fare, allowances. A lot of the other trips, a lot of these trips are also funded by the international partners and those who invite us. I mean, I looked at the figure for year 2019 and 20. Under Fiji Fest, they had spent about $3 million on overseas travel. So, I've looked at the trend, the figures. So it's not exorbitant in that sense. But sometimes, when ministers are not around, I mean, for example, it happened last time that all three of us,
Prime Minister and three Deputy Prime Ministers out?
Three Deputy Prime Ministers, we were all out. So I think...
and the Fiji Public Service Association saying that at one stage about 9 ministers were out.
Yeah, so I think, while the number of people going at one time may sound, big, but in terms of the actual budget, but, the point is taken. First, we are going to get this motion in the next sitting of Parliament, which will reduce the allowance substantially. So it will reduce the cost anyway.
So for the Prime Minister, from $3,400 a day overseas travel allowance, you're saying cut in half?
Almost half. I can't give you the exact figure now, but because the motion is going to Parliament, but it'll be a substantial reduction, almost by about 50%.
And you are also watching the overseas travel now based on the concerns being raised?
Well, I've had so many invitations, Vijay, from overseas, over the last 8-9 months, and many of them, funded. I have decided not to take many of them. In fact, I've declined probably more than 40 or 50% of the invitations, and out of the others that I've gone, these are very essential invitations where I'm required to speak, where I'm required to represent Fiji, where I'm supposed to have bilateral meetings to advance the interest of the country in a number of areas, particularly where we are negotiating, funding, where we're talking about, support, new projects. These are essential, and Minister for Trade, for example. I mean, he has to travel. I mean, trade negotiations require, most of the time, ministers. Deputy Prime Minister Govt, I mean, he is a minister for civil aviation and tourism, which also, and especially in the first year. So I wouldn't say that the amount that we spend is overly exorbitant, given the amount of wastage that we had seen over the years. So in a sense, and I think the Prime Minister has been very conscious of the criticism. I have been very conscious of the criticism. The whole government understands it. But I want to say to the public, with these figures that I have, that yes, people have travelled, ministers have travelled, sometimes too many have travelled at once. But I think the Prime Minister has told you and told the people of Fiji that these trips will be scrutinized very, very carefully, and only essential and required travel where it is supposed to be beneficial in a very tangible way, then travel would be.
And you don't have to accept every invitation.
And we don't have to accept.
Because everybody wants a piece of you.
Exactly.
So you're saying it took you 11 months to come to the decision to take the motion because the Parliamentary Emoluments Committee had not finished with its work. You're hoping that the allowance issue would be dealt with quickly by the committee?
No, I think, you're right. I mean, Vijay, as I said, when we came into government, there are a number of things that we had to do, in the first, 3 or 4 months. And obviously, we had to take, proper legal advice. We had to look at the Act. We had to look at, how this could be done. We wanted to do it in a holistic manner instead of piecemeal. So we wanted to set up an independent Parliamentary Emoluments Committee to look at not only just the allowances but also the salaries. One thing that people should remember, we are still on the 20% reduced salary. And this includes the Prime Minister, all the ministers, assistant ministers and members of Parliament. And I actually feel for my opposition colleagues, they are all on just $40,000 salary per annum. And, people were criticizing us for giving additional funding to parties and the constituency allowance. The system has, we believe in making sure that the Parliament, the parliamentary duties of ministers and members of Parliament is supported because there is a lot of demand on all members of Parliament, even if you are ministers, and particularly on the opposition members too. So this independent review of salaries and allowances, I think, will create a bit of public debate, parliamentary debate. The report will be put out for the public to see, and then we can come up with an appropriate salary structure, allowances, pension, etc., so that it's not done secretly as it was done before.
So your message is that a motion is coming through in Parliament by you to get these allowances reduced.
Allowances reduced, and the Independent Emoluments Committee will bring a report on other issues, particularly on the salaries.